Okay.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the
Three,
Replays,
three.
a weekly episode. Now,
No.
today's topic
Afternoon.
is education appropriate for children and teenagers. And I came from a conversation I had with a 15-year-old some time ago, and we're talking, and so and another 15-year-old asked, "How many boyfriends or how many relationships have you had?" And she said, "Oh, I've had six boyfriends and two girlfriends." And she was 15. And so I got a little confused and I said, "Well, so you've dated eight people?" She said, "Yeah." And I said, "Well, what's the idea of dating? Let me get a clear picture." And she was just basically, going for dinners, nothing more than holding hands, right? But I started thinking as well, within certain cultures, it's a taboo. You can't even talk. You can't even. And I was looking back and I thought at 15, I don't know if I will be telling. And this child was talking and was talking. Oh, my parents knew my boyfriend, and I'm like, what? And and if you look back at 15, like you, the parents don't even you don't discuss those things, right? And then research has also shown from the pediatrics .aa publications, right? It says sexuality education has been shown to help prevent and reduce the risk of adolescent pregnancies, right? HIV and sexually transmitted infections for children and adolescents with and without chronic health conditions and disabilities in the United States. But the thing again is, well, even with places or with climes where they've have sex education, you still have teenage pregnancies. In Europe, for example, I think UK has the highest number of teenage pregnancies, and they have sex education in school.
I don't
Now, we
know.
go back to the cultures. Let's use Nigeria for example, right? Most of us are Nigerians, right? We don't, these are conversations that our parents don't really have with us, right? And so, but then um, we still have issues of every now and again. It's not prevalent, but we do have it. Now, before we start, I'm going to show us a quick video with us. And then if you watch British TV, is a comedy on BBC. It's Citizen Khan, and it's still about taboos of sex education within certain cultures. So I'll just put it on for us to watch.
Important. Okay, Papaji. Now, I know your head is filled only with art and stuff right now.
Can you all
One
hear?
day you realize there are other things in the world.
Yeah, it's quite low.
I'm trying to sort the volume out.
Perhaps if you make me co-host, I could play it from my own end and
Okay, let's see if we can do that.
see if I can fix that for you.
Okay, but me, your co-host now, so you can see if you can share it from your end.
All right, you'll need to stop sharing.
Right. There
All
we go.
right, let me open it.
It's just in the meantime, why are you doing that? It's just a BBC program and about Citizen Khan. It's about a Muslim family, and they talk about the different struggles of living in England, um, and the different challenges they face and the clash of culture within the English society or the English culture and their I think they have their Pakistanis, right? So they're originally Pakistanis, and they talk about the clash of cultures between the English culture and the Pakistani culture as well as religion. So let's watch it.
All right.
Sweetie, I need to talk to you. Very important.
Okay, Papaji.
Now, I know your head is filled only with guard and studies right now, but one day you realize there are other things in the world, like boys.
Okay.
But what you have to remember is that boys are not like girls.
I don't know.
No, boys are bad. They only have one thing on their minds.
What's that?
Cricket.
Cricket.
Yes,
I don't like cricket.
I know, and that's good. But one day, you might decide that you do like cricket.
I don't think so. It's that boring.
You're right, it is. But one day, you might meet somebody, let's say a boy, and he's really into the cricket, and he might try and get you to watch. And you might think, well, there's no harm in watching. But then, he shows you his bat. And his pads. And his helmet. And the next thing you know, the covers are off. You're letting him play on your pitch. And you've been caught out by his googly. Do you see?
Sort of.
Good. You know, I thought that was going to be difficult. But it was actually very easy.
All right.
Right. So, probably you can. I think you take yourself off. I don't know if I need. Oh, can we? I'll just
You
continue.
can retrieve the co-host stuff again.
I think you have to do it. I don't have the power now.
Okay.
Yeah.
You're now host.
Yeah. Right. Okay. So, did we all get that?
Very
Now,
funny.
it's very similar to other cultures, and I think it's funny because they were trying to have the birds and the bees conversation, and even the dad was quite embarrassed to have the conversation as you saw in the video. Now, I mean, he couldn't even be direct. But the question today is it because if you sometimes if you look at if you I don't know if it's done some of us good or not. You know, doing this sex education as children, as teenagers, or what's happening, you have to find things out yourself. And sometimes what happens is there is a massive mistake. But then again, when you expose kids early, I'm not sure if it's good or bad because they're exposed to these things and tendency is they might know and know what to do or they might want to try these things out and so it's really it's I don't know if it's a two-edged sword. I would say I'm not sure if that's the right word, but it is tricky. But what I've also found it's some kids who get this sex education early seem to be quite mature and or the same mature and can have what you call an emotional maturity to some extent where they can have boy and friends and girlfriends just friends and they would say it's just plain platonic and there's nothing. Whereas others who don't have it tend to grow up a bit emotionally inept or emotionally disabled, right? And so it's quite. I think it's a topical issue. And I think it's something that I'm not really sure what side to go. So I'm going to put it over out there for us to kind of look at and see what your thoughts are. Do you think? I don't know who started first. Carlos' hand is up. Carlos, let's hear you.
All right. Thank you so much, Andrew. This is a very interesting topic. Well, there is something happens with the human psyche. You see, when things are going fine, nobody bothers. But when you tell people not to go do a particular thing, or you lay so much emphasis on something, then people want to do it.
True.
In fact, if you give an instruction now, this picture, please, nobody should look at this this person, XYZ name. Before you finish speaking, everybody want to know what is really interesting there that made you not to do that. You see, the age of consent, you have to also look at the age of consent when you're analyzing things like this. The age of consent in most European countries, for Germany, it's about 14 years old.
Yeah, in
Okay,
Sweden it's 15, in England it's 16. But you see
you can imagine.
the funny thing
Mhm,
is,
mhm,
they're allowed to have sex before they're allowed to
mhm.
drink
Good.
alcohol.
So now this is what I'm saying. Okay. Now, if you look at other cultures in Africa, in Nigeria, for instance, the age of consent is 18 years. And you have to really analyze this. What it means is that the society is giving these personalities the opportunity to engage freely and legally and experiment in sex. I do not think the education early enough reduces the tendency of maybe getting pregnant or HIV/AIDS and all that. I think it increases it. But what makes it look as if it is not so prevalent in places like Europe is that Europe has a sound health care management system. Europe has a social welfare system to accommodate the excesses of those things. The reason why it looks glaring like it has got out of hand in places like Africa is that in most African countries, we do not have the sound healthcare system, the support social welfare system to take care of these children. In Europe, for instance, if a 16-year-old or 17-year-old girl, in Germany, for instance, if a 16-year-old girl or 17-year-old girl gets pregnant, immediately she's diagnosed and she got the report from the hospital. She goes to the Ministry of Family Welfare and she's given something called a mutter pass or a mother pass. With that mutter pass, she goes to the other office for social welfare and everything, and she gets her apartment paid for. She's exempted from paying anything for the medical, antenatal, and everything. She gets something when she will be about to get the child, deliver the child. She gets some assistance, and she's been catered for. And society doesn't stratify her. But here in this part of the world, she doesn't get any support from the government. Society stratifies her, and it's a case of two cultures and two systems where one is good, one is But I don't think sex education early enough reduces the tendency of sexual
That's
disadvantages as well.
it. So that's good. Thank you very much, Ambassador. Chizaba has a hand up. Chizaba, let's hear you.
Okay. Just to add to what Mr. Kalu said, yes, it doesn't reduce anything, but because of the times that we are in now, children of nowadays are more, what's it called, and more, I'm looking for the word to use. They are sharper, they are more
They get
intuitive.
sense passes.
Yes, they get sense pastors. God bless you. That's the English. So children of nowadays have sense more than us.
Let me quickly add
Hello?
this.
Are you saying something?
Yeah, let me quickly add something. I think it is true that the kids of these days are more exposed, but also I think I'm just going to quickly add that the sex education is not just regard to sex. I think it's also with regards to helping them identify
Predators,
pedophiles
for instance. Mm-hmm.
or child abuse. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
think kids. So it's a two-way thing because we hear of a lot of kids who, boys and girls who are abused from a young age, and they didn't realize it was abuse
Yeah.
until
Yeah. Mhm.
life. And
Okay,
then you,
okay.
yeah, go on. Chidaba, let's say Chidaba. Chidaba after Chidaba is we'll
Um,
have Isaac. After Isaac, we have Bumi, and after Bumi, we have Kingsley. So Chidaba, let's hear you.
Okay, so as I was saying, so basically because of that, there are a lot of things that they'll be very curious about. And that curiosity, if they are not well informed, can lead to a whole lot of other things. Now, during our time, it's not like we weren't as curious because we weren't as smart, but our parents in their idea of sex education was put fear in us. If you touch a man, you get pregnant. If you even talk, if you as much as breathe near the man, said you get pregnant. So it was more of fear. So that fear, because we kind of like divided in fear, It's that fear that basically kind of gave us that caution. Now, in this case, there's a whole lot of rules with these kids. There's the, oh, you cannot, punish them a certain way because it dampens their ego. You cannot do this or do that. So there's just a whole lot of things you can't do with these kids. Now, because you can't do all those things, at one time you do anyhow, they flog you, they beat the hell out of you, your brain will reset. But here, because you can't do that, you basically have to give them the tools to make the right decisions. I'll give you an example. When I was pregnant for my son, so my daughter who is 7, I was passing on the corridor one time like that, and I was sharing her, with Google now, they're all very phone savvy. And she was asking Google, the Google voice question thing. And she was asking Google, first of all, she asked me how are babies made. And I was like, nah, you're not old enough to know how. So, forget about it. When you're old enough, I'll tell you. Then I was passing the corridor and I heard her asking Google the same thing, how are babies made? And I just thought to myself, like, okay, now this is getting out of hand. If I leave this girl, and Google will just be giving her plenty English of this, that uterus or no uterus and blah, blah. So I said, if I let this thing get out of hand, she might probably go and ask the wrong person. So I just had to call her, sit her down, and I gave her the sex talk that day. That was it. So that was the day we were going to have talk. Told her everything because I'd read somewhere, do not leave any names. Don't call it pet name. Call it as it is. So called everything, all the organs as it is, called the names of everything as it is. Told her this and that. But you can only do this when you are old enough. And when I mean by old enough, you have finished school, you are working, you've met somebody that you know that you love, and you feel that you are going to get married. So it is when after you are married, that's the best I can say to put the fear I want to put in my head. Do you understand? So unless people are married, this cannot happen, because if this happens, this and this and this is what the consequences are. Now, I have said my bit. I have explained as best as I can, and I'm hoping by God's grace that you have the wisdom to understand what I'm coming from. And I've had a friend of mine tell me that when her child gets to 16, I'll be 13, I'll be 14, if it's a girl or if it's a boy, she will just go and buy the soft porn and sit the person down and watch it till you are satisfied. She'll be in front of you and she will watch it till you are satisfied. When you finish watching it, sure, that's what you want to see, Abby. They did not hide it from you. So no curiosity. So she says the child will watch it till he's satisfied. When he's satisfied, you're not okay, fine, no problem. So what you've watched, these are the consequences of doing this and this. Now, carry condom, join body. That's what she says she's going to do. So everybody with their own methods. I feel like it is important to let them know so they don't go asking the wrong people questions and getting the wrong information, being misled. That's basically what my 2 cents about the matter.
Now, you mentioned this years ago. This was in a teenager, and I was talking to friends, and they said, "Oh, can you imagine this?" Well, I think we started talking about sex. We must have been teenagers. And one said, "Oh, she was an only child," and she said, "Oh, there were a group of friends. They were going to walk in between boys," and she stopped them and said, "You can't do that. You're going to get pregnant." And they went, "What?" And my mom said, "If you walk past boys, you will get pregnant. If boys are talking, you walk in between them, you'll get pregnant." And they said, "Well, what if you have sex with them?" She said, "No, you won't get pregnant." So exactly. So do you see the misinformation and miseducation? But Isaac, your hand is up, and after Isaac is Bumi, and then Bumi Kingsley. Isaac, let's hear you.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon, Isaac.
First, we're talking about sex education. First, we have to understand what sex education is. And sex education is the provision of knowledge about body development, sex, sexuality, and relationship, as well as skill development to assist young people in communicating about sex and making educated decisions about their sexual health. Now, parents, they need to train their children, give them that moral guidance. It is very essential because in our time now, children are increasingly being exposed to graphic sexual material, either on TV, internet, in books, and in comics. But another question is, how soon should parents start such instruction? We should know that young children need to know about their body, how their body works, and how to care for themselves physically, and how to protect themselves from immoral people. Before getting to that puberty stage, that is the age at which signs of sexual maturity begins to appear. A lady, a female, a daughter needs to know about the changes that will occur in her body and to understand why and how menstruation takes place. And also for a boy, he needs to know in advance about nocturnal emissions, that is having wet dreams, semen and all that, because that is when he starts experiencing those changes. And as a parent, you are also to tell them about their private parts. This is how it is. You can tell your son that, say, it is okay for our family doctor to touch your penis, your private part, as long as either me, your dad, or the mom is there. But it is not okay for the babysitter or nanny to look at your penis or your vagina or to touch them without telling them. So if you give them this thing, if you tell them, they can alert you when they see a funny situation, when they sense a foul play, when someone is trying to play with them. And also educating them on sex too helps them to keep themselves from sexual abuse. And it will also make them to know how sex is, and it's safer and consensual, because your first sexual experience, maybe as a teenager, you want it to be something like you give your consent to, not when you're being forcefully asked to give it. So if we train them from infancy, let them know on time, then I think we are protecting them against those evil acts or those vile things that are to befall them when we don't tell them. We should not be shy about it. I know, like in Africa, it's very rare for parents to educate us on this, but in the way the world is going right now, we shouldn't be shy about it. We should teach them at a very early age so that they will have that awareness of it. Thank you.
Isaac, I think at this point we have to call, with all the research, we have to call him Professor Isaac. Prof Isaac. But it's Prof. I on the chat. It said she thinks that from the age of 5 is a good time. Well, again, Carlos asking why do we say part and when we should. Now, by the way, now, Bumi, let's hear you. Your hand up. After Bumi is Kingsley. So, Kingsley, get ready. Bumi, let's hear you.
Yeah, well, I think Isaac just really said what I actually wanted to say. But I'll just quickly, so that we don't repeat ourselves, I'll just quickly.
It's Professor Isaac. With that research, it's Professor Isaac.
Oh, yeah, Professor Isaac. All right. So that I don't repeat what the prof has actually done. I mean, he's done really remarkably well. The only other thing is that I'm going to say what Chizoba already said, which is parents have the sole responsibility of actually being the first teachers of sex education. They have the sole responsibility. I mean, if you allow the environment to be the people to teach your kids about sex, you're really putting them, you're taking a very huge risk. If you're allowing the media to be their primary teachers, you are not going to like what is going to happen. If you allow their peers to be the ones to be their first teachers, you're not going to like what's going to happen, because after learning or knowing these new things, what do you think is going to be the next thing they want to do? They want to experiment. I mean, experimenting without proper guidance, it can be disastrous. So, but I mean, I want to actually, would I say counter what was initially said, which is if you expose these kids to these information, it doesn't, I think someone said something about it increasing the chances of pregnancy. I'm not sure about that, or STIs or HIV and all this. I'm not sure about that, because if the proper education is actually given, they would know how to protect themselves. They will know how to conduct themselves in these kinds of situations. So I think the most important thing is what Professor Isaac already mentioned, which is giving the kids proper education about it.
Okay. Well, I'm just going to clarify that. I think what it was, Carlo there, what Abasa was saying was that when they say don't do this, that's when, and I think it's a natural instinct. That's when
it's a natural thing, yeah.
Right. And that's the point he was saying. So that's why it's a two-edged sword, really. You could give the information and they are well informed that it helps, but also you could give information and they go, oh, actually that sounds good. Let me try it. Or I think
it also boils down to the constitution of the individual or the matrix of the individual. I mean, you could tell a kid or any individual, don't pick up this cup on the dining, and then that kid, just because the person is would I say, explore, he likes to explore things. You get, I wouldn't want to say stubborn, but let's say they just want to explore. So he might just still want to go and try it out and see whether it's a good fit for him or if it's a bad fit for him. So the most important thing is that you as a parent has been able to do that first prerogative of teaching your word. And then the next question would now be, you as an uncle, you as an auntie, or I think someone mentioned the maid, what are you obligated to do to perform this role as well? Or are you going to allow yourself to take advantage of a curious kid that wants to know what sex is all about or what something is about?
That's another conversation entirely, because a lot of people are messed up in the head. There are a lot of people who are messed. But you remember that, well, I think some of us, when you bring this kind of conversations with your parents, like the beating you will get.
They don't even want you to talk. It's true.
It's true. When you beating,
They'll tell you, shut up your mouth. What do you know? Just keep quiet. When it's time, you find out, you know.
Your hand is up. Kingsley, let's hear you.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Yeah, Andrew, thank you for this opportunity. It's my first time on this program. I always wanted to join, just that my schedule most times on Sundays, you know, we attend family meetings, village meetings, and all that on Sundays. So
everything.
Yeah, but this time around I'm free, so I decided to join.
Welcome.
So the topic is a very interesting one, because it's something that it's important, but over here in Africa we look at it as probably we don't know how to handle it. Our parents didn't know how to handle it, so they kind of push it away.
Yeah.
But it's a very important topic. And I want to agree with what Bumi has said, and I also want to partly agree with what the speaker, the lady before Bumi, Chizoba, yes. First thing, what she said correctly, which I want to agree with, is, and the same thing Bumi said was, as a parent, it's your responsibility to actually sexually educate your child. And the earlier you start, the better.
Yeah.
And, you know, you have to be able to differentiate between a child and a teenager. And so you should be able to use the appropriate language that they can understand for a child and for a teenager. So that being said, I want to use myself and my wife as examples.
Right.
Now, from my own family, from the home I came from, you know, it's a typical African, Nigerian family, Igbo family. I couldn't really ask my parents or my dad or my mom about sex. I was shy on my own, and you know, my parents are not that type that you can discuss such issues with, you know, so I had to find out myself about my sexuality. But on the contrary, my wife came from this kind of home that is an Igbo family too, but the father, the mother, and, you know, they are very close-knit. It's a very close-knit family. and they were able to talk about almost everything. And when I met my wife, I dated other girls, I'd had sex with other girls. But when I met my wife, I didn't even know that there was a difference between dating and courtship. To be honest with you, I didn't know. I didn't know anything about the different. I didn't know that it was different when you say I'm dating someone and when you say I'm in courtship with this person. I didn't even know. It was my wife that taught me, because I met her as a virgin. And then she taught me that, look, there's a difference between dating and courtship. When you are dating someone, you can actually date someone without having sex. In fact, you are not supposed to have sex when you are dating someone. It was my wife that taught me. I didn't know. And then the same thing about courtship. So, I now discovered that she really knew so much about this dating and courtship stuff. So, I had to swallow my pride and learn a lot from her. I married my wife as a virgin, so I learned a lot from her. So that was when I knew that, look, as parents, you need to intentionally teach your children about their sexuality. Like Bumi said, sex education is not only about sex. It also involves the risks, the diseases, unwanted pregnancies, the art of negotiation, communication, and a whole lot. So as parents, I think it's so important that it has to be intentional. You have to, it's not such a nice topic anyway, but you have to learn more about it so that you can know how to handle it when the time comes. Because, from my own research, I found out that there's no appropriate time. The earlier you start, the better. If you start communicating with your child freely about topics like sex at a younger age, it makes it a lot easier when they are now older. And then they could trust you and they could come ask you some more honest questions when they are now even more matured or more curious. Let's say it that way. So for me, I go with the opinion, it is important. It should be intentional, and then it shouldn't be left to the school. It's not a school duty only. It's not only community duty. As parents from the home, I think it is your responsibility to start teaching your child or your teenager, about sex education. So that's my opinion.
Thank you very much, Kingsley. Now, Kalu has his hand up, but Kalu, before you go, I'm just going to read what Golden typed in. Golden, welcome. I think it's your first time as well, so welcome and thank you for joining us. Now,
Thank you.
she has said, tell them or don't tell them, whether you like it or not. Children and teens, especially these days, would likely start having sex and other sexual activities earlier than we wish. And the point is educating them on time so they can make healthier and informed choices. So if they decide to start having sex, they will know about safe sex and preventing pregnancies, and should such occur, they would be free to seek medical help as soon as possible. Now, Bumi has also added, he said this brings another issue. Who needs the sex education, parents or kids? Now, apart from the conversation I had with the 15-year-old, why I thought about this was a lot of us who come on this forum and have kids, some don't and intend to will have kids in the future. And so these are issues that we would have to encounter at some point. Either we've encountered it already or we would at some point, right? So the issue of the parent who needs the sex education, if it's the parents or not, that's again, if you can't give what you don't have. if the parents themselves is not well or properly informed,
Yeah.
how can they communicate that knowledge? Now, Carlo, let's hear you.
I think I'm going to look at it again on how those that want to sex education can go about it. See, society has to be ready to assimilate such.
Yeah, you. I think you should mute the TV or the radio around you, and then if you can speak.
Can you hear me better?
Yeah, go.
Okay, so what I mean is that society has to be ready to assimilate such type of control. I give you an example. If you are a family that live this in the US or Europe and come from societies where, for instance, the age of consent is 15 years old, the way they teach my children, they bring the social things, they put it in the class, bring the condom, put it on, they teach them how to wear the condom and all that. So imagine if a child comes to Africa, maybe the parents were somehow transferred to take up a job here, and they begin discussing with their friends, their age mates, about the sex education they required. Most of those children will report those skills to their parents, and their parents may come back to the school and start making trouble with the school authority that one of the class in the class was telling their child about how to put on a condom and how to do that. So, there will be a clash. So society has to be ready to assimilate such sex education. If you bring in the sex education curriculum like you have in the West down to Nigeria, people will withdraw their children from the school.
Okay. Thank you very much, Kalu. I think people really struggle to hear you, but I think the whole thing that you were saying was that society also has to play a role. I think that's the crux of the point you were making, that society also has to play a role in assimilating and understanding the whole point of the sex education. And you said, for example, if they bring it to Nigeria, for example, because of I think sometimes it's ignorance and conservativeness. And so
Excuse me. I think some people say they didn't hear me very well. So can I shift my position and then make a statement?
It's okay.
Is it clearer now?
Yeah, but
clear?
I will,
Okay.
sorry, made the point. I will explain. And now, if you take it to bring it to Nigeria to schools in Nigeria. So, for example, some parents will withdraw their kids from school, and this is due to conservativeness or ignorance, or call it whatever you want to call it. But they might think different. But now we have Chizaba's hand up and Golden. So let's Chizaba go after Chizaba Golden.
Okay, hi. Yeah, what I was gonna answer was, the question you said we read through about, if it's the parents that are gonna have who needs the education of the kids. Now I'll say either way, you know what happened has happened in the past. If you're not taught about sex education during your time, that's fine. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't, find a way to make sure that mistake isn't made with your kids. Like I'm sorry, I like to throw a lot of examples because that's the way I know how to explain things. When I was at a point in my life, when I was growing up, my mom was this very hard-handed person. She would always, snap and shout and that kind of thing. Basically, she's just the kind of person that felt discipline, and discipline is not just by flogging, it's by shouting and snapping and those kind of things. So I grew up knowing her as that kind of person. My dad, on the other hand, was, the way he is. So when I was started having my kids, when I had my daughter, I found out that I was almost doing the same thing when, she does something bad and I'll snap and I'll shout or that kind of thing. But then I realized it wasn't helping my daughter. I was basically making her withdraw, inside more. So basically her self-esteem was being messed with. And then one day I had to have this candid talk with my mom. I was like, I said I didn't feel like I was, I'm sure I used the word love, but I didn't feel like I was, should I say, raised, I won't say raised properly. I didn't feel like I was discussion properly or whatever it is. There's the English. I
Use
didn't feel
Igbo.
like,
Use
you
Igbo.
understand?
How you spoke to your brother? Just use Igbo.
Use you. Translate it.
So I just basically opened up to her and told her that, I feel like she was angry. I felt like she was angry a lot. I felt like she was always shouting and snapping. So she made a statement. She said that's how she was brought up growing up, and she thought that was love, that was training kids. So that's how she, and then I told her, that I'm trying to do the same thing and it's not working for me. So basically we need to change how things are done. And she apologized, and I changed the way I work with my daughter. So when you're saying, if you didn't get the same kind of training, then what do you have to teach? I didn't get that sex education training from my mom. Let me not lie to you. I didn't. I found a lot of things out myself. I made a lot of mistakes. I will not lie. You understand? Curiosity got me this far. But growing up, I realized I didn't want my kids to make the kind of mistakes I made and experiment in the way I did, with the trial and error. Yes, they can have their own moments, but I wanted them to be fully equipped with whatever they needed to make their decisions. Time is too short to be jumping over mistakes and stuff like that. Yes, there are some good mistakes you can learn from. There are some that are not necessary. And then I made a point. I told myself that whatever it takes, I would teach my kids on time about sex education, so that tomorrow, was it Bumi or I think it was who was saying that Mr. Isaac was saying, if tomorrow somebody is harassing them
Professor Isaac.
or something, Professor Isaac, thank you.
Point of correction.
So if they find themselves in those kind of awkward moments, they know what is right and what is wrong, and then they know how to alert you and tell you, oh, this person did this, I didn't like it, because they've heard it before, you've told them. But it's better to let them know than not for them not to know at all. We can be shy about these things and call it the African way, but the fact is that times are changing. These kids they know more than you think you do. But Absolutely. The best thing is, with all the information they have, just let's guide them with that information so that they know what, funnel it in a way that shows them, okay, this is for this and that for that, not, using that information recklessly. That's what I wanted to add to the...
Thank you very much, Isabel. That was great. Golden, let's hear you.
Yeah, thank you for having me in this program. So I would just like to make 3 points. The first one is I want to support that it is never too early to start sex education with our children. I'll use my son as an example. He's currently 5, but I started with him when he was 3 years old. The reason being that, we hear a lot of things happening in kindergartens, we hear a lot of things. So I had to teach him on time. So a cousin of mine came to visit us not long. I think he was already 4 thereabouts. And then I asked her to bait my son. And guess what? She was baiting his private part. And I've told him only mom is allowed to touch it. And only when I'm baiting you, or if probably it's paining you, then I've told that the doctor too, like somebody mentioned, when I'm there. So auntie was baiting him, which was normal. She has to watch the penis and all that. But the next thing, my son was very angry. He came and he was like, Mama, no. I said, what happened? He said, auntie was touching my 20. so you can imagine at that age, he already knows that it is wrong. And he's telling me that somebody is, touching his penis. So to make him understand that what he did was very right, I called auntie in his presence and I was like, auntie, why were you touching his penis? So she said, no, I was baiting him. So I told him, okay, this is the only time if somebody is baiting you, they can bait it with water, but don't play with it. Should anybody play with it, you have to tell mama. So I'm sure he will grow up knowing that it is very important that what is his, stuff like that. So that's my point of saying start with them early. Then the second point I want to raise now is we should teach them complete. I'm in the medical field, I'm a dentist. My dad is a doctor. So, but I learned sex education halfway. If I say halfway, the only thing I learned was wait until you can start having a boyfriend when you're 18. That was the only thing I learned. So I was in the university. I entered Uniben then. I think I was 16 years. So I was patiently waiting to be 18 to have a boyfriend. And after I had a boyfriend and other things started following, what next? I didn't know. So I learned it the hard way, like my sister was saying. I learned it the hard one. To date, I still regret many of those things, but I've told myself my daughter will not hear the half news. She's going to learn everything that she needs to know. My son, the same thing. So that's the danger of teaching them just one part of it. You have to teach them everything. Then the third point I want to now give is children, like I wrote before. I live in Germany, so they have access to a lot of things. Especially children are living abroad. You can't really control them that far. But if you say you want to be a good parent and you're teaching them this is the right thing and this is the wrong thing, they will still have to make their decision, whether it is the right one or the wrong one. So what you as a parent should know is that should they make that wrong decision, please let them have access to the right information on what to do. I was my gynecologist. I think that was 3 or 4 months back, and I saw a 12-year-old girl. She came in with her mother, and they were ordering oral contraceptives. The Nigerian woman in me, I was like, so I was calculating her age. I heard the age, the year she was born, and I was calculating in my head. This girl is 12. This girl is 12. It was ringing. This girl is 12. This girl is 12. And the mother came to refill her OCP, as in the pills received. And I was asking myself, is this right? So I now remember that it's not the mother's fault. I'm not going to judge her, but at least she's making her have access to pills. That means unwanted pregnancy at that age, since she's already having sex, she's not going to probably fall a victim. And like someone also said, in Germany and other countries, should they not get pregnant, they also know that, yes, there are other ways to help them. That's what we should be teaching our children in Nigeria and in other African countries. Let them know that if they happen, not if they, we hope they take the right advice, but should such things happen, they should not shy away. They should always come back home and get help, so that, the consequences that now follow that wrong decision, it doesn't get more than that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gordon. Thank you. Now I think I'm just going to respond. The second point you raised, that giving half information or no information, and what that leads to, that's what I said before. It's not just even making the mistake sexually. I think with the sex education, it teaches you about having proper, appropriate relationships and what's appropriate within certain relationships. And so some of us who kind of didn't really get that, or you didn't get that in full, what happens is you then grow up, like you said, you make mistakes, you become emotionally disabled. You are emotionally inept, right? Because you would almost lack emotional intelligence to deal with relationships of different kinds, and you get things mixed up a lot, and so there's a lot of mistakes. And thank you very much, Bumi, Golden. Now Bumi's hand is up, and after Bumi, it's Kalu. Now Bumi, just before you go, I'm just gonna say there's this issue of, you keep saying, no, the age of consent is 18 in Nigeria, which is true in law or by law, right? But the thing is this, right? The thing is, we still have in Nigeria, where the age of consent or where you're allowed to have sex is 18, you still have, especially in the north, people marrying 12 and 13-year-olds as 16.
Exactly. They are the highest hypocrite.
You understand? So that's a debate for a different day. It's a whole different debate, that one. But just so at this point, you see that we Nigeria in practice, well, not in practice, in theory they have it and say, oh, the age of consent is 18, whereas even lawmakers say under the guise of religion and culture are marrying 12, 13-year-olds.
Yeah.
That's, I think, again, I think, you see, that's another thing. I think all that also comes with poverty as well.
It does.
Lack of education, all these things. But we'll come to that. Now, Bumi, your hand is up. After Bumi, Ambassador Kanu. Before you get again, sorry, let me just quickly. Now, Blessing wrote before. Blessing wrote, I think parents should be friends with their kids so that they're able to teach them about sex education. And if not, the kids will find their friends elsewhere and confide in them instead of the parent. And the problem I have with that, I think we should be parents, not friends with our kids. But again, that's my opinion. I think parents should be parents and not friends. Of course, the
I think, I
parents.
think, I think, I think. Sorry to. I think it's coming from the fact that your children should be able to speak to you freely. Maybe friends was the wrong word you used, but he's maybe I'm assuming that he's coming from the position where your children should be able to come to you and talk to you freely about
Have that.
anything.
I've
Yeah.
seen that.
Actually, that was even the first thing I wanted to talk about, because I listened to what Chizoba said earlier, and I was like, this is one of the things that most parents don't really even look into in the first place. They just, although Andrew has said be parents and not friends, I mean, I think you still need to be both of them. You need, because it's very important that you're able to build that rapport, build that trust with your kids, so that in times whenever these things come up, they're able to hey mom, see, something like this came up, this boy said this to me, or this girl touched me like this. Exactly what Golden just narrated in her own case with her kid, and I think it was a relative, because you don't know if you don't instill those kinds of information in the minds of your kids, they may not be able to tell you, oh, something like this happened to me at certain points in time. So it's very important that you're able to build that rapport with your kids from a very, very young age. Now, the next thing I want to even talk about is, although Chizoba hinted it earlier, she said, I think a friend of hers that said she's going to buy porn and give it to the kid to actually watch. I like to look at it as you need to still be able to, of course, I'm not an expert, but then for me personally, I feel it's important to be able to pace the amount of information that is coming to your kids. I like the fact that Golden has said that, I can't remember the word she called the man's thingy. I mean, even if
my son calls it 2020.
2020. You're right. So I like the fact that
small.
Yeah, I like the fact that I mean, if you're speaking to a 2-year-old or a 3-year-old, there are some terms that are convenient for them to actually. It's okay for them to actually call it those things. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. They can still know the real names. Hey, how you doing? Yeah, so it's very convenient to use playful words to teach them, okay, this is what this is, but then you should still be able to tell them, all right, this is the real word, this is what it actually is. At least there's going to be a language that you and your kid are familiar with. Once the kid is saying, this person touched my twin, or something is, I mean, probably for security reasons, they'll be able to speak to you in a coded language that others might not understand, but then they've reported you get. So I think it's still okay. Now, a 5-year-old doesn't have any business with seeing porn. I'm just using that as a case study. A 5-year-old, some information, I don't think you really need to actually pour all that kind of stuff. I mean, it's a little, I mean, being that I'm a little bit, I was a science teacher. I taught biology for a couple of years. I mean, there's some of the information in it is important for maybe a 14-year-old or a 13-year-old, but I mean, a 5-year-old might not get it in time. The kid might be a genius, but I mean, most of them might not be able to really relate with it because they can't relate with those information. Andrew,
Yeah,
I cannot hear. All right, so
sorry, she said she was gonna play for her 13 when the child clocks 13 or 14, not 5. That's
no, I'm just making examples. There are some people that would want to tell them tell a 4-year-old boy all about menstruation and all those kind of things. He might be irritated by that kind of information. He doesn't want to know that kind of information. So you need to
Hello? Of the head of a 4-year-old.
Yes. So these are the kind of things that you want to be able to pace kids on, or your word. Then the last thing I want to talk about is going to be very, very controversial, which is, I mean, in as much as I don't support marriage of men to 13-year-olds, I mean, it's very difficult to actually put a number to it. I mean, maturity is different for different societies. I mean, if we say that 18-year-olds is okay for an 18-year-old to actually get married in Nigeria or have relationships in Nigeria, are they ready for marriage as well? I've seen some 21-year-olds that are not ready for marriage. You get 24-year-olds are not ready for marriage, or they are not ready for these kinds of responsibilities. So I think at the end of the day, yes, there's got to be a benchmark for each society so that they can actually do some checks and balances for these kind of things. Hypocrisy, of course, is a big deal. Is a very big deal. It's a big issue, and I'm not sure I'm even ready to even get into that kind of debate right now. But I still think that putting a number to when a kid or a boy or a girl is supposed to get married is going to be very, very effective for a conversation like this right now.
Right. Thank you very much, Bumi. Now I'm going to return to your last point. And the thing is this, as much as you say, so maturities differ, that is true. You find 30-year-old men and women who are not mentally ready for marriage, that is true. But for a 14, 15-year-old for marriage,
completely out of it.
They are not, first of all,
there's some 8 years old, Seth. You're talking about 14, 8, Seth. There's some that marry 8 years old.
Okay.
Their brain, ask their are not fully developed first, right? The brain has not finished developing, first of all. They have not finished growing. That's number one. Number two, the level of their emotional maturity is 0 to nothing, right? Do you understand what I mean? It's pretty much 0 to minus, right? And that's exactly what Sharon has said in the chat. He said maturity of the mind and body is completely different. That is true. That's exactly what I'm saying. And so there's no way in the world, no matter how smart that 15-year-old is, that they are emotionally, mentally mature. Do you understand?
Very correct. Very correct. Maybe I wasn't exactly clear. What I was just trying to say is that for us to say 18-year-olds is okay for 18 or an 18-year-old to get married, I'm not sure if that is even the right age. You get some society might want to push it up a little bit higher. So that's where I'm even coming from.
Okay, that's interesting. That's good because you're saying, but you're saying 18, but not saying it's a must. But they're saying at least 18, we can consider you an adult. They're not even saying, they're saying it's because there has to be a benchmark. There has to be, because if it's free for all, people will be marrying 5-year-olds.
I'm even saying push the age a little bit higher, the benchmark.
I think so, but because that's another thing we'll come to discuss at some point. We know that men don't mature until at least 30 or mid-30s. We know this, right?
Very true.
Women of the same age.
No casting. Go ahead. Sorry, sir.
Always afraid of casting. Now, wow.
I think ladies already know. The topic of parents being friends. Now, I've seen situations, right? Especially this was in England, where mom and daughter are out on a night out on a Friday night or Saturday night, right? And the mom is saying, "Oh," the daughter is saying, "Oh, my mom is my best friend," and two guys are pulling them, taking them home, banging both of them in the next door to each other. My mom is my best. Do you think that's a problem? My mom is my best friend. I told my mom everything, and she is hearing her mom screaming because one guy is banging her, and the other girl, the other friend, is banging her next door. On the next, do you understand?
You see, this has to do with the maturity of society. Society shapes the activities people indulge in. And that's what I was trying to emphasize. You see, our society, the African society, is not yet matured to begin assimilating sexual education, as much as sexual education is very good. So the first thing will be, let sensitization take the frontal role. Okay, just like we did in female genital mutilation. You see, the female genital mutilation scale in Nigeria in Africa, on a wider scale, has reduced to, in fact, you hardly find cases of such things happening again. Why? Right from my primary school days, they began this sensitization down to the grassroots in indigenous languages. And you see, you prepare society first. Because if you do not prepare society and try to say, okay, this thing works with the West, let us try to push it. If you bring it in, it will clash.
Absolutely.
And when it clashes, you have an exacerbation that you cannot even handle. Okay?
True.
So society has to first be conditioned to understand that this, and see, we should call the terms what they are. This thing, they call it Willy, they call it Dido, the other person said they call it 20. These things even confuse the children more because they begin to see the thing. You know, there's an Igbo saying that says that when the penis doesn't do what it's supposed to do as a penis, children will think that is something that they used to play, that is a toy. So the penis has to do. Why laughing? I'm saying a proverb. I'm not the person who said it. So the name should be called this in. They say private part, Willy, Dido, Twinny. These things, those things are complicating the matter. Lastly, before I go, Andrew, please, lastly, the example of the lady who said she would teach her child, use a porn to teach her child something at 13 years, when she's 13 years old, that is a very catastrophic process. In fact, that is why we also need to educate the parents. Because what happens in porn is actually not sex, it is actually the dramatization of sex. What it will do to that little child will be to seed in the potentiality of seeing her body as an instrument of sex. You will be surprised to know about the statistics that come up. People who are addicted in pornography, people who they are married, who don't understand that those things have been edited. They go into marriages with people they love, but they cannot gain sexual satisfaction because what has been registered in their mind as a good satisfaction of sex, which is not real, which was even manipulated by the movie makers and all these things, remains with them, and this thing is destroying a lot of lives. So that is a very, Chizoba, if you know her very well, tell her that she should try to seek counseling her own self to understand how to,
if you have seen how my
guide
mouth
the
was
child.
wide open when she said the day itself, I was just laughing. She said.
But the thing is,
But the thing about it is, though, these children will still go and look for this thing anyway. How did my brother get caught? They will end up still looking for this thing.
It's not our place to judge in terms of what is right or wrong, because we are still, trying to work what's right or wrong. So if that person feels this is the right way, even if you think it's catastrophic, well, it might work for them. We don't know. So I think we have to leave that there. Now, number two, with the terms of using terms, like Bumi said before, we agree. I think it has to be appropriate or age appropriate. Now, you can't use terms like menstruation for a 4-year-old. There's no way they will get it. Or start telling them uterus when the sperm meets this, and then it's way above their head. So I think for certain ages, using like what softer terms so that they understand, but as long as the core of the message is passed, I think that works. Now we're just gonna hear Tamara, and then we would round up for the day. Tamara, let's hear you.
Okay. I was going to go back to what you were saying about being friends, like with your parents. I think I agree with you to an extent. It's not like you cannot be friends with your kids, but you have to, there should be a limit. They should know that at the same time, I'm your mother or I'm your father, but at the same time, I'm open to listen to you. Come to me, be ready. Don't use this kind of fearful look on them like, what you want to come and say to me. Be ready to listen. Even when they're talking, your expression should not be like your expression should be at least a little bit, okay, you're ready. Don't give them expression of judgy look like, okay, stuff like that. It will help them, because I've had an experience whereby a cousin preferred talking to me. Like, he comes all the time. I want to tell you something because I know you don't judge me. You will listen and this and that and that. Stuff like that. That's one. Then I also feel like at every stage, you don't need to tell them everything at a particular age when they are 3. You tell them everything at that time when they are 3. I feel like, okay, maybe when they are 2, there are things you need to tell them. When they are 3, like that, you don't pile everything to them at once, so that they get it as they grow older, like that. So I feel that way too will also help. In terms of the kind of words you should use, the real name and not using the real names. So, my opinion.
Now, just to round up, now But Sharon just simply agreed with what I said earlier and what others have said, that it's not appropriate to be teaching a 4-year-old about menstruation. It should the 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 method of passing this information should be age appropriate. But she has also added, which is controversial. Well, it's not that controversial. She said, I think, because Sharon is in the medical field, right? And so she's said that the frontal cortex of the brain, which again is the frontal cortex of the brain, is responsible for consequences and knowing, basically right for wrong, consequences for actions of actions and things like that, right? And it's responsible for decision making, essentially. Right, that's how you're able to, okay, do I make this decision? Is this right or wrong? She said that it matures the frontal cortex of the brain, which is the decision-making center of the brain, matures in men at about the age of 25. Sharon, thank you very much. But I want to know, what about for women? What's the age for women? Sharon.
Yes, we are very interested.
Right.
I'm sure Mr. Carlo is also interested in this one as well.
That one, I'm looking into it. Listen, it's a lot sooner. Yeah, I imagine so. But again, that's also debatable. There are also exceptional cases, right? Before they hit 20, I won't. Well, it's not impossible. But I know that the average maturity of a girl of the same age as the boy is usually 5 years ahead, on average. Anyway, look, it's been great as usual. And today, I think it's been more somber. I think it's been more because it's quite serious. But it's about the future now. We're talking, it's not just, it's happening now. It's things we're dealing with now, and it has to do with our children and the future of these children. Now, next week's topic is, why do people cheat? Now, those joining us for the first time, please subscribe to the YouTube channel. It is Real Views. And follow us on Instagram. It is Real Views 2021. We're here every Sunday at the same time. So please don't always join us. Let me see. Hold on. Yeah, okay, yeah. Sharon just said before women hit 20. Again, please join us. If you're joining us for the first time, like Kingsley has, Golden, and a few other people from all over the world. Thank you for joining us again. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel, Real Views, and follow us on Instagram. It's Real Views 2021. I look forward to seeing us next week again when we discuss the topic, why do people cheat?